Welcome everyone. My name is Sean, and today I want to talk about a small story, a story out of the state of New York, but I think it is indicative of how the left operates versus how the right operates when it comes to going after a particular brand for ever daring to not express your values. And I want you to really hone in on this story. I want you to understand it. I want you to reflect upon it when you hear calls from people on the right to get off the Bud Light boycott, to side with them, to jump in with both feet just because the UFC happens to have taken a bunch of money for them. Because the left never lets things go. The left always goes after their enemies, and they continue to perpetually go after them, even if it supposedly doesn't align with their other core values. And a perfect example of this is this legislation that is being proposed in the state of New York to go after Chick-fil-A nearly a decade later after the controversy of them being a Christian company and the founders of said Christian company not supporting same-sex marriage. They're still targeting Chick-fil-A this far into the future, and you're talking about giving up on Bud Light and going and buying it and drinking it because months later they decided to pivot in their marketing campaign and put money into the UFC. Now, we're going to talk about it, we're going to discuss it, but before we do, I want to say thank you to everybody signed up over at actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
And thank you to the podcast listeners, Spotify, Apple, and Google's podcasting platform.
See you then. Well, you know how the song goes, closed on Sunday, you're my Chick-fil-A. By Kanye,
By
right?
Kanye.
There we go. But there's a new bill now being considered in Albany, New York, that could challenge the restaurant's long-standing policies. The bill would require any food location that has a drive-through rest stop to open 7 days a week.
So for those of you who need a little bit of background on this story, let me give it to you right here. Chick-fil-A is a place, it opened up, it serves chicken sandwiches, it's become extraordinarily popular. In fact, when it comes to same-store sales, Chick-fil-A actually does significantly better than McDonald's. It's one of the most highly regarded, most profitable fast food chains. They're quite selective in their locations. However, years ago, it came out that the owners of Chick-fil-A, who, by the way, always keep the restaurant closed on Sunday, are in fact Christians. They have conservative Christian values, and they were actually donating money to what is characterized by the left as anti-LGBT organizations. And ever since then, it has been a race for Democrats, for left-wing progressives to target this fast food chain. I believe you had the mayor of Boston way back when saying that Chick-fil-A was not welcome in the city because of their political speech. They were not going to allow them to open restaurants in the city of Boston. Seems a little ridiculous, seems a little bit extreme, but ever since then, there have been all these different ways to try to target Chick-fil-A because of the fact that since 1946, they decided to close on Sunday.
Chick-fil-A has always closed on Sundays since it first opened up in Georgia in 1946. And a lot of folks out there say they don't want to see that change.
Now, this has been going on for years. Even though Chick-fil-A has backpedaled in some regards, I believe they started donating to some pro-gay organization. And by the way, there's never any reported instance, as far as I could tell, of Chick-fil-A's abusing their LGBTQ, XXIIP, LMNOJ, KWY, whatever employees. They've been targeted viciously, and the latest targeting of them is from the state of New York, which has decided that they're going to propose a bill that's going to require all fast food restaurants with the drive-thru location that happen to be near, in, and around a specific highway to be open 7 days a week.
I don't think it's going to fly. I could see where they want it for travelers on a Sunday to have more options to eat on the road.
Yeah.
But
Now, the reason I find this to be pretty funny is because I think a lot of people understand and they're bought into the Chick-fil-A mindset that they're at least going to close. They're going to have this one day off. They're going to have Sunday off due to the religious reasons of this private corporation, because, by the way, it's not traded on the public stock market. And because it's actually kind of nice for the employees to always have at least one day guaranteed off from Chick-fil-A. It's actually quite nice compared to the other fast food chains. On top of that, Chick-fil-A, they pay you a little bit of extra money so that the employees are happy. Their average wages, even before the recent minimum wage increases, were higher than your comparable fast food restaurants. And typically, compared to other fast food places, they have a pretty good record of treating their employees well. And supposedly, the Democratic Party, the Progressive Party, the party that's on the side of labor, should be in favor of this. They should be on board with it. But the thing is, Chick-fil-A does these things out of Christian altruism, and because they do those things for that reason, based on the Christian ethic, they are deemed to be enemies of the Democratic Party, so we have legislation after legislation targeting them specifically and trying to use force of government to compel them to be open on Sundays. Now, obviously, it would seem like it would be a problem. It would seem like it would be unconstitutional for the government, the state of New York, to dictate the opening hours of any particular business. However, they do say that there are justifications for this, even though this bill is clearly and obviously meant to target Chick-fil-A. If you go to these various places on the side of the road, on the side of the highway, at rest stops and whatnot, all the other restaurants, all the other options are open through this 7-day week kind of time period, and the only one that has one given day off for all of its employees is, in fact, Chick-fil-A. So obviously, this is a thinly veiled targeting attempt at the restaurant. And one of the things that I find interesting is that their justification is, look, when people pull off the side of the road, they shouldn't have to deal with something being closed. They're hungry. We want them to have more options. We absolutely love the truckers and all the people who are traveling, so we're doing this for them. And one of my favorite things that happened in response to this is that a local news agency actually went out of their way to interview these people, the people that supposedly this New York State bill is advocating for, that they're defending their divine right to eat at a restaurant that wants to be closed and doesn't want to have their employees work on Sunday, and they responded like this.
For some, 6 days of the popular Chick-fil-A restaurant is good enough.
You know, if I can get Chick-fil-A 6 days a week and not get it 1 day a week, I'm not hurt.
This was the sentiment spoken by the majority of people at the Chittenango service area. Truck drivers who stop at service areas frequently saying that Chick-fil-A should be allowed to stay.
So as you heard from the local news reporter right there, the majority of people that they talked to were perfectly fine with Chick-fil-A being closed on Sunday. And by the way, almost everybody is perfectly fine with it, even though they like it, because they feel like it's respectful to the employees and whatnot. And a lot of people who support Chick-fil-A happen to also be Christians, and they like the idea of people respecting the religious tradition even when they're a very successful business, and it would be so easy for them to open that extra day and bank those sales. One of the craziest things that I heard about Chick-fil-A is they actually have a restaurant in the new Atlanta Falcons Stadium. Most of the NFL football games occur on Sunday, and that restaurant is closed at the Falcons Arena every Sunday. They still stick to their principles even when they're paying through the nose specifically to be there, and keep that restaurant open and turn down all that revenue, because you know for a fact if you could buy Chick-fil-A at a Falcons game, you probably would do so. But I've seen legislation aimed at Chick-fil-A when they're in the Denver airport. All across this country, there's all these left-wing people who supposedly care about employees, yet they're still targeting Chick-fil-A based on a controversy nearly 10 years ago, and I think that's something that you guys need to remember and think about when you're hearing from people that we should let go of the Bud Light thing. We should start buying Bud Light because now they're good and honorable, even though they never apologized, never changed their behavior, and never did anything to make up for what initiated the initial controversy.
Basically, the first few minutes of this 9-minute clip is Dana White saying everyone should go out and buy cases and cases of Bud Light because they're more aligned with you than you know. And I agree with him. I don't know how much he can say to drive the point home. But you have a lot of people saying, no way, Bud Light is dead to me, etc. And you know what? I don't think it matters all that much either way. But I'm on the buy Bud Light train right now. This is one of the greatest victories. You know why? The right boycotted Bud Light. Bud Light sales tanked 30%. Bud Light desperately tries to win back the customers. They sponsor Harley Davidson. Doesn't work. Then they do a massive deal with UFC. And we all kind of groan like, why would UFC do this? And then Sean Strickland comes out and says, Bud Light has now sponsored everything I have to say. And he said some things I can't repeat on YouTube because of the censorship. But very, I would say, to many people offensive, though many of these people are offended by everything. And that means Bud Light switched from underwriting wokeness to underwriting anti-wokeness. There's nothing more you can ask for. I suppose you could ask for an apology. But money has changed hands.
Now, look, I like Tim. He's a good guy and everything, and I understand his perspective. I think it comes from an earnest place, but I just think he's wrong right here. The fact of the matter is, they would never stop. What we're seeing with Chick-fil-A is proof that the left would never stop. So giving up after a couple of months, after they put all this money into the UFC, is ridiculous and absurd. I'm far more aligned with friend of the channel, Anna Perez. Link in the description to her Twitter if you want to follow her.
They want to destroy us. They want to destroy everything. And so if it was like a patriotic company and this was happening, they'd be like, no, keep pushing them. Don't buy anything from them. That's why we're like, whenever they cancel us, they have no forgiveness. They have no grace whatsoever. And it's like, why would we extend that to them?
And for proof of this, all you need to look at is the fact that they're still attacking, trying to change, alter, punish Chick-fil-A based on a controversy that's over 10 years old. They never stopped the canceling of a brand that they associated with conservatism. So the idea that we're going to let it go and say bygones be bygones with Bud Light after just a couple of months is absurd. Now, I'm not big on boycotts overall, but I said this at the time that if you just focus on one brand, if you just targeted them and you cause them serious damage, then maybe this will put the fear of God into other brands. And by the way, this is a principle that the left wing is leaving up to. They're still going after Chick-fil-A even around 10 years later, just based on the fact that they had that controversy with same-sex marriage over a decade ago.
I think it's they're taking away their right of choice. I mean, this is a country of free enterprise. So just because they're closed on Sundays, I don't know. I don't think they should ban them.
It's perfectly fine. People know it. There's Burger King in there. There's, other places. Popeyes, you can stop somewhere else. You can get off the highway.
So right here, you have two truckers. These are people who pull off the side of the road. They end up eating a lot of fast food. Hardworking people supposedly being defended by the state of New York. And they want the Chick-fil-A to be able to do what it wants. They don't want it to be shut down. And by the way, they interview another person, just a random traveler that happened to be in this area, and she speaks to the unconstitutionality of this proposal by the state of New York.
One customer at the service area added that if Chick-fil-A's were banned from service areas, she believes it would violate their constitutional rights.
We have freedom of speech and religion. Just because they choose not to be open on Sundays, they are very open about that, and I think that everyone needs to respect that.
Whether a proposed bill requiring throughway rest stop vendors to be open 7 days a week is constitutional becomes one of the questions now being debated.
Now, whether or not this is constitutional is actually an intriguing question. I believe that it isn't. I believe that the government should not dictate the hours of businesses. But to be clear, there are narrow circumstances where state governments do exactly that. So bars and restaurants are the kinds of businesses that I'm talking about that routinely have their hours of operation at least somewhat restricted by the city and by the state that they tend to operate in. Now, this is due in large part to the fact that the cities, states, local municipalities tend to issue liquor licenses to these places, and with those liquor licenses, there tends to be terms of use or terms of the license that they end up having to follow. So if you're in a particular area, like in Texas, I remember they stopped serving alcohol. I believe it's after 1 a.m. In New York City, it's after 4 a.m., and all these places and establishments end up having to close. However, that can be seen as more of an issue with the license required, but they do issue business licenses to these kind of restaurants. So maybe on that end, you could try to justify some kind of restriction related to their hours. However, forcing the bars and the liquor stores to open on days where they don't want to open seems like it's a different animal. So on its own, I have an issue with it. Even with the liquor license precedent, I also have an issue with it. But more importantly, fundamentally, what this is targeting Chick-fil-A's business, the people in the business, and the religious freedom of those people. Because the reason they close on Sunday is for a religious reason. The reason the state of New York is targeting them is for that very same religious reason. If there happened to be a Jewish franchise, a kosher franchise that was closed during the Sabbath for the Jews, which happens to be Saturday, this would not be an issue at all whatsoever. There would be nobody in the legislature targeting them. If this were an Islamic business and they decided that during Ramadan they were going to close the entire time that the sun was up, I guarantee you none of these people that are talking about this business were going to go after them with any kind of legislation. This is specifically about the Christian religion and specifically about Chick-fil-A. And again, when you have these kind of bills coming out just to target Chick-fil-A seemingly randomly, but it's not random, it really should put it in perspective whenever we're talking about forgiving a brand that transgress against the values of the right so easily just after a couple of months, because they gave Dana White and the UFC a bunch of money. Now, some of you might think that I have not yet proven that this is about Chick-fil-A being anti-gay marriage over a decade ago, but the thing is, this bill is actually proposed by State Assembly member Tony Simone, and when he was running for the State Assembly, he was really running on the idea that he would be the neighborhood of Chelsea's first LGBTQ assembly member. So yes, 100%, this is about this particular issue. That's what he ran on. He eventually won, and one of his first actions in office, or one of his first major actions in office, is to propose such a bill. So it's all about revenge. It's all about fighting back. It's all about punishing companies that don't hold your values. And again, just think about that when you're going to relent on the Bud Light boycott after a couple of months. So yeah, not only am I against this bill, not only do I think it's ridiculous and absurd, but I think it is a big problem that people on the right don't have the stick with it attitude, the staying power that their opponents on the left do. They're still going after Chick-fil-A all these years later, and a lot of people on our side of the aisle are talking about backing off of Bud Light for no reason. They got no apology, they got no concessions, they're actually winning this battle against the company. All you have to do is stay the course, but these people want to back off, they want to give up, they want to surrender, and I don't think that's a good idea, and proof positive of that is the fact that the left never stops their warpath against places that hold your values. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like the video, show them by leaving a like. Subscribe for more content. Follow me on my social media. Support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about New York State targeting Chick-fil-A. Till next time.